Welcome, everybody, to Cybersecurity with Query. My name is Neal Bridges, Chief Information Security Officer.
Hi, everyone. Matt Eberhart, CEO at Query.
Matt, I'm so glad you chose to join me today. Excited to talk about the top 4 things that are happening in cybersecurity today and what they mean for our audience. I'm going to go ahead and go first, and I'm going to talk about a breach that was literally reported yesterday, but it actually happened back in December. Activision, which is a game company, they're known for their titles such as Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, Overwatch, things like that, just announced that they did confirm a data breach that happened in early December 2022. And this is what we see in our industry. This is what's very, very hard in our industry, is that breach happened almost 2 months ago, and we're just now hearing about it. It does give kind of an indicator as to what it's like to have that delay in a cybersecurity breach. But the way that they got hacked was the attackers were using an SMS phishing text. So that's basically getting a text message on your phone to gain access to internal systems. Now, the video game maker claims that the incident did not compromise any source code, which, if you've been following and seen in the news, things like Okta and GitHub, these source code breaches have been very, very huge in our industry here lately. However, attackers have disclosed to a very, very prominent Twitter account known as VX Underground, proof and evidence that they did actually compromise some internal systems and do have access to some internal sensitive data for Activision. And so this just continues to show how, even large companies such as Activision continue to be victim to cyber attacks.
Nice. So a lot of you probably know that Query's mission is to simplify search for security teams. So I'm always on the lookout for interesting information, articles on how teams are using data. And I came across one last week by Jonathan Rao. Some of you might have missed it. It was on Valentine's Day, and hopefully you weren't checking out dark reading too much on Valentine's Day. But I will put the link to this one in the comments. It was really good. So Jonathan talks about a new term called Sec Data Ops. And before you jump all over me, I get it. All right, do we really need another term? We've got SecOps, We've got DevSecOps, but stay with me for a minute on this, because I really like how Jonathan defines Sec Data Ops. And so he defines it as seeking to ensure that security data is always curated and available when teams need it. And anyone that's watched a security team or security operator like hunt across dozens of browser tabs or try to find the right data when they need it knows that there's a lot of friction there. And so I really like this approach and how Jonathan thinks that a lot of like cross-team collaboration and some preparation before the breach or before the incident on being able to get access to this data can really help.
I do really appreciate that you introduced me to Jonathan. He has some hot takes on LinkedIn and his insights into the work that he's doing to really bring forth this idea of federated search and what was the term that you used, that you called it?
Sec Data Ops. So
Sec
Jonathan's
Data
term.
Ops.
I Googled it. I think he coined it. We're going to give him credit for it. But yeah, definitely check him out on LinkedIn. He's got some great content.
Nice. The last one that I want to cover, as a longtime cyber nerd, former hacker for the government, I love it when I learn about new threat actors that exist out there. And so there's a new threat actor group that Symantec uncovered. And Matt, you're going to love this name here. The threat actor group is named Hydrochasma.
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 Right. Is it a super villain?
We could go off on a tangent how when I was in the military, how we would name threat actor groups in the military. I can only imagine how terrible it is on the outside world, the private sector as well.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. But this threat actor group is targeting specifically shipping companies and medical labs in Asia. God, Neal, why are we talking about, hacks that are happening in Asia? Because those verticals are those hacks are eventually going to make their way here in the United States, targeting those specific verticals. Hackers very, very frequently start with small, insecure populations across the globe and then try to advance their attacks and populate them from those regions into other parts of the world as well. And so don't discount simply because something happens in Asia. But Matt, what I really, really loved about this, and this takes me back to my days in the military, was Symantec had discovered that these guys are being incredibly stealthy. Now, when I talk about being incredibly stealthy, they use a technique called living off the land. Now, what does that mean to you, Matt?
Oh, is that like sustainable farming? Probably not. I think in this case, it takes me back to like the advanced adversary kind of
Yeah.
research days. But that's when the adversary kind of gains a foothold, and then they just keep moving around. They might harvest some credentials here. They might find a way to get over there, but they're not going to be real noisy, and they'll be a lot harder to detect, right?
Exactly, exactly. They use a lot of the built-in services and built-in tools that are inside of your network already, so that those things go relatively undetected by your security operations team. And I guess this ties very, very closely into what you're talking about with Jonathan Rao in terms of being able to have that centralized view of data points so that you can start to identify when these attackers are using things like living off the land. Symantec also identified, and this is very interesting as well, that they're not using any forms of custom malware. They're using a lot of the off-the-shelf open source projects that we often are familiar with in the industry, such as Interpreter, Cobalt Strike, and other types of programs out there. And this is what is continuing to allow them to be further stealthy as they propagate their attacks.
That's interesting. It's really interesting. I really like too the idea of kind of keeping an eye on these different types of things that are happening, because we're going to see more of that, and you can learn something from all of these. So
Absolutely.
that's great. So my last one today, we've covered 3 security topics, is non-security related.
Oh,
I like to make sure I'm reading and listening to podcasts outside of security, and I've got one that I think you're going to like, Neal, if you haven't already seen it. So there's a podcast called Founders by a guy, David Sinra.
hmm.
And what David does is he's done like 200 of these podcasts where he'll read a biography or an autobiography of an entrepreneur. Sometimes it's a builder or an artist. And he like goes deep into the biography and the different things that you can learn. And he must have like a near photographic memory, because in the course of doing hundreds of these, like he'll not only give you like a deep review of the book, but he connects the dots to all these other books and all these other great entrepreneurs. And he does it in a way that it always inspires me, and it's really interesting. So I went pretty deep recently on some of his episodes on Henry Ford, Steve Jobs, Edwin Land, like really trying to see what can I learn from these entrepreneurs that have literally changed the world that we live in. So we'll put the link to this one in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and apologize to anybody that likes this kind of content. Like if you haven't seen this before, it's easy to binge watch a couple hundred episodes. So
Yeah,
don't hate me for that.
you've definitely ruined my playlist now for that one. And what I will say is this is still security relevant. I know you said 3 security topics and a non-security topic, but this is absolutely relevant. Failures are all about success. We have to rely on failures and the learnings from failures so that we can succeed in the cybersecurity industry, whether it's, watching other companies fail at cybersecurity attacks, whether it's our own failures internally as a team, but failures are important to our growth. So I absolutely do think it's cybersecurity related, Matt.
Yeah, and I think that's really one of the things I've taken away from listening to a number of those podcasts. A lot of these entrepreneurs like fail really extravagantly, like Edwin Land and Polaroid. Like there were a lot of crazy things that happened there before they ultimately changed the world, even the world that we live in today. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Awesome. Well, I hope you all got as much out of this as we did. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Till then, stay safe.